Yes.
So how can I find out? Just touch a flame, or can you tell it?
The question, the question is, last time I talked about that the fire dance cannot be, I cannot teach it to someone. It's not something that can be taught. This is interesting, and this will help you understand the fire dance a lot. This is the year 2001. Natives from Africa come to Europe. The natives from South America come to Europe. The Asians come to Europe. And the Europeans that have had the good fortune to travel to these other countries, good for you. But if you really think about it, human beings, especially in the Western world, they really look at everything as entertainment. Everything is being entertained. Everything is staged up. And this very secretive, very slow to penetrate, this way of thinking is really basically hidden from the conscious mind of the Westerner. They pay a ticket, entertain. They pay for something, entertained. Entertain, entertainment. So when most people come for the fire dance, to them it's entertainment, some form of entertainment. The people where this particular understanding runs into great conflict is when the people, they get scared of the fire dance, or they run off, because it's past entertainment. It's not entertainment, and so they don't know what to do with it. The human being that stays safe keeps everything under entertainment. Then everything is controlled, everything is choreographed, everything is rehearsed. Rehearsed, rehearsed. Then it's controllable. Then it's doable. The fire dance is not entertainment. The fire dance is not controllable. The fire dance is something that you got to be very, very natural and extremely let spontaneity do its thing. And that's the difference. So when it comes also to the fire here's another phenomenon when it comes to fire. Fire used to be worshipped, and now that we are able to transport it, control it, and take it through pipe lines, and we're able to put jets so we can inject oxygen into the various gas, we now can put it into homes and can have it pretty well safe. And so we have, you could say, people have mastered fire. In essence, we have developed some sense of control of fire. And we know that it takes a great deal of fire to boost a rocket above this atmosphere, a great deal of fire. But the fire has to change. It can't use a typical gas fire off a stove in a home. And we have learned to, let's say, change the content of the fire for jets and for other types of uses. And yet it's still fire. We have been taught that fire burns, and it does burn. We know that. Fire can be, you could say, set itself in motion. It can destroy a whole forest. It can destroy a home. And yet fire can warm our hearts. And as it warms many people, and as it cooks our food. But when it is put it in another context that is so commonplace, then fire is not even a big deal to people anymore in the Western world, because we can control it. I can control it. I can control it. And there's a little sense of pride, and in essence, the only way you can control it is that little knob. That's the only control you have, is that little knob, not you. Not you at all. But when it comes to your flesh, and then actually put it into the fire, the mind goes blip, 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 blip. Forget it. There's no room for it. It can't. You can't do that. Fire, if you take a look at this element versus the element of water, air, or earth, that this element is basically not stable, even though it may look stable on a stove and it has some stability there. But it's basically something that is alive. It's not alive like a creature or a human being, but how it moves. It has the appearance of being alive. And yet the fire is not something to be worshipped at all. All it is an element just like water, air, earth. But the element, being that it has the appearance of having some lifelike qualities to it because of its continuous movement and its continuous food, which is oxygen, and some other source, such as wood, paper, etc. That in the fire dance, when you start to mix this particular element of fire and skin, the fire itself goes under a different context, a different name, different label, because the fire is just not fire anymore. It is because of the nature of the ceremony itself that changes the element of the fire itself. The relationship between the fire and the human being has been changed from a typical entertainment, typical social experiences that we all experience all day long, and now it has been transmutated into ceremonial fire, into a ceremonial relationship. So when it comes to the skin and the fire itself, they are speaking to each other differently. And this is for a person to put themselves into this position. The towel, you got to offer up the towel to do that. And that cannot be taught. Either you do it or you don't. And along the way, one cleanses oneself of the illnesses that we have, not just of our mind, but the illnesses of our body and the various attitudes that somehow get in our way. And just provide, let's say, enough space that we learn to understand what it is to be a good guest here on this planet. The fire was here long before the human beings, as was the other elements. And fire will continue to be here long after the human beings are gone. So when the guest looks at this, not as that I control it, but to have a relationship with not just the water, but with the air and the earth, and the last element, which is the most difficult, is the fire. So when one fears oneself, one cannot, let's say, work with the fire. It is when fear is understood, not eradicated, not erased, because fear is still a necessary element on this earth. Appropriate fear is necessary. So it is to work with the fear, not to kill them or to change them or whatever, but to understand fear itself. Then when the ceremony is taking place, the fire dancer has, you could say, a different perspective. A fire dance is just not fire dancing in the year 2001, but for whenever. It's a timeless thing. The fire dance is taken and having a focus on the heart. And the heart is the fire. For fire is really the only element that is the doorway between the matter and the spirit. And it's ironic how all basically philosophies in the old religions, how they use fire, but they stay away from it. Why stay away from it when it's in your heart? My mind is still programmed that fire burns. You know that? It's still, I can never remove that. We can't. We cannot. Because the imprints as a child, just like my imprints were just like everyone else, and I burned. I burned many times. I worked in kitchens, and you get burned. Fire burns. And so the imprint is still there. So if I dance with my mind, guess what? Yeah. So your heart, you have to know your heart, and you have to know your mind. You have to know where your mind is and where your heart is. And that's a life task. So it's develop and to have very good discretion of one's heart and of one's mind. And yet, ironically, humanity, when you take a look and think about the word humanity, there's a warmth to it. There's a beautiful, beautiful warmth, not just courage, effort, strain, sadness, joy. It's a warmth to it. When you think of someone who is ill, or someone who has really brought delight to your life, there's a warmth to it, of your heart. When you think of mercy, you think of compassion, there's a warmth to it. We all have experienced cold hearts. We know what it is to have a cold heart. And we know what it is to have cold eyes. We know what it is to have a cold bed. We know what it is to have cold thoughts. And we know the difference. When the bed is warm, you have your hot water bottle. We know what it is to have cold feet and to warm them up. We know what it is to feel another warm body. We know what it is to feel warm thoughts. For you see, the point is really not the fire, is not the problem, to work with it. To really work with it is to know yourself as a human being first. And the realities of having cold hands versus warm hands. Knowing what it is to have a warm touch and why, and what a cold touch can do and why. Don't turn your eyes away from the shadows or from the light, but embrace them both. Don't turn away from the mistakes and the righteousness, embrace them both. It is not who is wrong or who is right, for it takes all the various shades of gray and black, and it takes all the various shades of light and bright. For it is actually fire is, once you really know its characteristics. Fire to many people is violent, but when you really understand it, it's very, 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 very soft. Very soft. And fire is very, very, very warm. You got fire in your eyes, you got fire in your breath, you got fire in your tongue. So I wonder really, what is the human being? To be over 99% water, and yet what it is to have a small flame, one small tiny flame in your heart that is brighter than all the suns of this universe put together. One tiny flame in your heart. Know the human being, and you will know fire. Know the coldness of darkness and ice, and you will know fire. Know the warmth of a bed, and you will know fire. Did not run away from anger or hatred, but respect it, but look at it in the eye, and you will know fire. So you start with your feet, and love your feet. Start with your hands and get to love your hands. And start with your face and get to love your face. And start with your hairs and love your hair. And start with your back and love your back. And start with your shoulders and love your shoulders. So the warmth of this one little flame deep down inside your heart can slowly spread. And when it finally reaches the surface of your skin, and you are in a ceremony not just for the past, but for the future, and not just for the past and future, but for the present, because there is a predicament going on. A predicament of time and space, of ignorance and hatred, a predicament of cold, wet days and warm days, a predicament of speaking and not being understood, a predicament of having memories and not being able to tap them, a predicament of being young and then all of a sudden aging so quickly, a predicament of being nice and intelligent and then all of a sudden losing it. Fire. So how can all that be taught? a guide that I can be, a guide. To trip you when you need to be tripped, to push you when you need to be pushed, and to kiss you when you need to be kissed. That I can do. But these words, and where these words come from, and it depends on how thick you are. How thick you are in hearing with your mind or your heart. How thick you are with the busyness that we all have. Or there's too much attention to what one has done to you, wronged you, or right you. Or your mind is too busy with too many things of the outside world. And yet what can change you the most is how this radiates you, this plutonium radiating you, mutating you. To not just be influenced, but have it radiate. In essence, it's very much like aspirin, a continuous flow of aspirin that is very much like a designer's drug. It comes in and it's designed to. Yeah.
Is it appropriate to hold the hand of that temperature?
Yes, that is coming, doing honesty of the situation. What matters is your honesty of whatever your situation is, whatever the predicament is, whatever the problem is, by being honest with it and holding it, just holding it. And you know you cannot just turn into a bird, or you just can't add some little magic potion to it and have it transform. But this is just what your situation is now. And by holding it and offering it, it's the same thing is that me, myself, and I have so many things that I'm ashamed of. And just like everyone else, same thing. And we are taught very quietly in everybody's upbringing to hide this shame. And most of the shame we don't talk about. And we're supposed to hide this shame. And when you really look at the nature, when a human being has become so efficient, so professional at hiding shame, guilt, fear, whatever from the public, what's happening inside? It is actually developing more of a separation between yourself and the external environment. So you could say fields of veils start to develop, walls start to develop inside. Who is walking through the door? The Spirit sees who is walking through that door. We cannot hide in our thick skull. It doesn't work anymore. We're a glass house then, totally glass house. But we're so used to hiding behind bone, behind false faces, that it's no big deal. So we expect this hidden nature to be hidden continuously in all the realms. But if the Spirit sees, and if we're nothing but glass houses, and we have this conditioning, this habit of holding the shame, and we just can't go out and splurt it out, and it cause chaos. Other people, I'll lose my friends, I'll lose my family, I'll lose my husband, I'll lose my wife, what do they think of me? That's why all these years, there has to be some way of releasing this, changing, altering the conditioning. And actually, it's the relationship between the internal environment and the external environment. And the way to do it is to bring it and hold it into your eyes. The shame, the guilt, the fear, bring it into your eyes. Bring it forward into your eyes. And that, you could say, is an act of will. Without speaking it with your mouth. You're speaking it through your eyes. It will draw tears. It won't feel nice. It won't feel good. But to get out this poison is what is necessary. And it's difficult to get all of it out. Yes, it is. And it's not necessary to get all of it out, but just to get the mechanics going, the relationship going. It's like an outside conduit. It's like putting an electrical cord outside of you, connecting out here. Because it has to be connected with the external environment. And when this connects, now there is genuine honesty of oneself, of one's predicament. And you're no longer putting the mask to the external environment, to other people, because now you have it in your eyes and it hurts. Because now you're going to be vulnerable as a result. You're going to feel extremely vulnerable. And you have to allow yourself to go through this transition enough so there's a change of chemical reaction inside. And only then can this certain strength, this certain courage show itself to the point that the spirit, the light of spirit can come in. Look at it this way. This beautiful, beautiful prize is going to go to the person who comes in here with complete honesty of body, mind, and spirit. You go out. I put on my special spiritual glasses. Till you start walking in. Many are called and few are chosen. And you got to ask why. What in the world is it? Just stop hiding. Stop hiding. Just stop hiding. I am my darkness, I am my light, I am my shadows. It's all okay. I am wrong and I am right. I'm sad and I'm full of joy. It's okay. I've got scars and I've still got baby skin. It's okay. I still fall off trees. can walk straight. It's okay. I can be tired. And I can go hungry. It's okay. Tomorrow at 1:30. A few days ago, I was talking to this reporter who writes articles, and it was suggested to him to write a good article of the fire dance. It is best to experience a fire dance first and not just stand to the side and witness and watch, because when anybody first witnesses the fire dance without jumping in the water, they can only see maybe 10-15% of what the fire dance is all about. To this person, his subjective remarks were that the fire dance was violent and like murdering people, pushing people around. And it's funny how the mind can perceive anything it wants, and especially adding a word like the violence to it. And so there was a suggestion that that one has to dive into the water to really see what it's all about. And this person remarked that that he's going to have to check in with his higher self to see if he's going to come or not. And my advice was that don't check in with your higher self, check in with your lower self, and you will get better advice, actually. And and I mean that. You would get much better advice. The New Age philosophy that has swept over Europe already and is traveling throughout the world is teaching people that you can check in with your higher self and it'll tell you what to do. And it's ridiculous, it's highly ridiculous that you can just make a phone call and check in with your feelings, especially when one does not even know oneself or what the feelings are or where they are emanating from. And especially if one does not know the implications and not just the strength, but the durability, and you could say the magicalness of the mind. And the most magical part of the mind is the rationalization of the mind, that the mind can rationalize anything it wants to make yourself right or wrong, or to make anybody right or wrong, and find all the good reasons and all the wonderful logic if you wish. That's the beauty of the mind. And that's why we have so many fences and walls, and that's why we have so many different philosophies and religions and ideas. How the mind can rationalize itself into any given situation to suit your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas, your emotions, your dreams, your fantasies. And to break this down, this, it's almost a well-designed software, you could say, the rationalizations of one's mind. And one can actually rationalize oneself into bliss or even into hell quite easily in a moment or two. One can rationalize oneself into a great depression or a light one, or a small high, or a very ecstatic high, very easily. And then to put oneself in the driver's wheel, to put oneself behind the wheel of your own automobile, and with your handy to your right that you could locate and call your higher self. How the mind loves to rationalize that it can control even the higher self. It can control the heavens, it can control the hells, and it cannot. For we have very little control of anything, actually. Very little control of hardly anything in life. And yet one definitely feels a sense of pride to know what 1 + 1 is. And it is a great accomplishment, actually, to figure that out. And it is even a better accomplishment to figure out what is 5 + 5. And when you start to get into your multiplication tables of 2 × 25, not just the accomplishment, but the pride, a good pride, a healthy pride goes with it. And especially once you start to know how to tie your own shoes and put on your own socks and put on your own dress, and that somehow you got the brush just right, that you brush your hair in such a way that everybody comments, what a beautiful job you've done. The accomplishments, adding all the various medals of war and accomplishment will go onto your chest. And pretty soon we can even drive automobiles. We can communicate with lots of people. We can make lots of money. We can get an awful lot done very quietly, quite easily. And yet, we're very fragile human beings. Some of us, we are more resilient to bacteria and viruses, and some of us, we're not. Some of us cry, some of us do not. Some of us understand things much better, and some of us do not. And yet, we have a very fragile part of our body, our neck, that's very, very small, you could say, in comparison to the chest. And to use this head and this neck to bend a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and yet to bend it up, to look up. And sometimes it is to bend it down, to look down. And we all know the various feelings that we have in our life when we feel clear and when we feel very confused. And we're all trying to find that very special magic key, either made out of crystal or gold. And sometimes all we find is a stick in the woods. Sometimes all that is there is just a very sophisticated toothbrush. But that really isn't the key. For somehow the formulas are beautiful. The formulas of not just putting medicine together, or the formulas of putting various plastics together, or various steel. But somehow we know that there is an intelligence behind it all, a well-designed formula. But one has to turn oneself into a mystic, and not just a citizen of Germany or Switzerland. For don't forget, we put on the clothes to go to work, and we change the clothes when we get home, and we put on different clothes to go to sleep. We don't wear the same clothes. And as it is for the same awareness, for the same mind, for the same attitude, for the same search, The search is different for what is above, and the search is very different for what is in society. And the clothes are different too. For to understand what it is to be spirit, you have to let go of what it is to be German. You have to let go of what it is to be Russian or Indian. For the eyes have to look into a different direction. The mind cannot think of 1 + 1 anymore. And that is why the preparation for it all is important. The preparation to go to work, to dress well. The preparation to get in your car and be a good driver. For when one has that understanding and prepares oneself to let oneself be absorbed, to let the Spirit come. For all it is a matter of providing the space, just providing the space. And it's just not stillness that invites the Spirit, but in most cases it is the action that invites the Spirit. And yet the most beautiful thing is, for the Spirit is the paradox of action and silence. And silence in one hand and action in another. And like the magic of creation, it's a transcendence of both. Then what do you have? For the humbleness that a human being acquires after living so many days and so many decades, the humbleness that a human being acquires is the result of seeing there's very little any creature can really do to affect life for what it is. There's very little any parent can do to raise their children, actually. The most we can do is just clothe them and feed them and hope for the best. And as it is for any government, as it is for any teacher, whether it be of public school, elementary school, or university, and while that person is walking from place to place, and while that person may be healthy today, and while that person is still young, when this person slowly, as they're walking to open up a door into their office, just for a moment, the person can easily take off and exchange their clothes, and exchange their profession, exchange their perspective, and put on the clothes of a mystic. And not just contemplate, but know realistically that somehow the earth magically feels like it's very still, and yet this planet is traveling 486,000 miles an hour through space. very, very fast. And so the mystic says, with realism, and from the depth of one's heart, and from the back of one's mind, who has their gas to do this? Who has the gas, the petrol to do this? What started the flame that created the moons and the suns and the planets? What jet fuel did this? And in what direction am I headed to, I ask? Is it north or is it south? Is it east? And who decides how fast this planet travels? Is this just the right amount of speed for me? Or you see, the mystic becomes an astronaut and has an astronaut's view, but uses the sciences of not superstition, but very cold, hard facts of reality. And then the humbleness in one's mind and in one's heart becomes bigger. It expands like a balloon, ever so gently and quietly. And then very quietly, the mystic, like a child, where does my nose come from and who put it there? Where have my toes come from and who put my toes there? Where did my face come from and who put it there? Who blew the breath into my lungs and started my life? And the mystic knows very, very well it is not the answer that one seeks. But the beauty of acknowledging the existence, and yet the mind will always hit a ceiling of a knowingness or a wisdom or a piece of information, and it's okay. The ceiling has been reached. And that is the time that one uses the neck that can so easily bend down. For so many human beings, they misunderstand what touches the inner eye to slowly open up. For pride is really for the land. Appropriate pride is really for school and for living amongst other people and living within nature. But pride, whether it is appropriate or inappropriate, does not open up the inner eye. It is the acknowledgement of what is. And it takes a vast amount of humbleness without seeking a question. For one really has to really consider the mountain just sits there. You don't have to ask why. It just sits there. You don't have to ask why. Why do you love me? You just love me. You don't have to ask why there's a storm. There's just a storm. And you'll still survive. So you can let your mind rest when you look at what's in front of you. You can let the curiosity and the questioner rest. Let your body rest. For what is above, it is not Germany, I assure you. It is not America, and it is not Africa. Rest. And when the questioner relaxes enough, or when that compulsion, which is really basically somewhat like an illness, and there's no more pushing inside to ask, and then the eyes begin to see, and then the eyes are beginning to be used for what they were intended for. To see what creation is, like all children basically do, until they start school and are literally forced into the left brain, forced to get away from colors and spontaneity, forced to stop singing with everything they see. Think about the age that you are sitting in this chair. And whether you're the age of 12 or 48, or whether you are the age of 70 or 22, you have survived the 22 years, the 48 years. You have survived the 80 years and the 12 years. You survived it. You made it. You can rest with it. Rest with it. You can rest with it. You can rest with it. You can rest with it. And yet we do not know really how we got here, and yet we do not know how we really made it this far. You can rest with it. You see, the breath, it never ages. The breath never ages. The breath is not one day old, and the breath is not 100 million years old. For the breath of an inhale is always in the moment. It is always new. It is the body that ages and shows its time with lines and scars, with being taut and being very loose. And yet somehow we are the breath and the skin. Another paradox in itself. But when the mystic puts on their clothes, the mystic becomes the breath. Peace to your minds. Peace to your hearts. Peace. Open up your eyes. Let's dance. Huh? Comments. Our comments from our mind, our comments from our head, our own comments, our own perspective. What we see, what we think. What we see, we know. What we see, this is the way it is. What we see, this is really what it is. Our comments. To walk into the path of what it is to be a real human being, one has to let go of your own comments and understand what comments are and where they originate from. And people think they are the comments. People think that they are the originator of the comments. And people live off comments. A comment about this and a comment about that. A comment about what happened here, a comment about what I see here. Comments. And most people do it consistently. And most people do it with great passion. And most people do it with great convictions. Great conviction. The comment is true. And yet, when one starts to realize what a human being is, one has to relax from one's language, which is the language itself. The very words of that culture, whether it is of Deutsch or American, English, Russian, African, for it is what's in that language that really speaks. It's in the very nature of the words itself. For words, they're just not something that are invisible. For words are sound. And sound, like a picture, speaks 1,000 different pictures. Sound, like a picture, speaks 1,000 different sounds. But people don't see these. And these sounds are like throwing a rock onto a pond and watching the waves emanating from the impact of that stone hitting the heavy water. And there are waves and waves and waves and waves. And if you could be a surfer on each little wave and ride the wave all the way into another person's head, into another person's ear, and that wave hitting that eardrum, a certain ding, a certain ding, and you stay with it. You're still the surfer, winding down into that eardrum, and how overwhelming it is. But it's a sound itself that where it becomes a word later on. It's a sound itself that turns itself into a picture later on. And that is what speaks. It is the nature of that. But people think that they are the sound, and they're not. They're of a language that taught you a certain way how to look. And if you don't have 32 different descriptions for the word snow, you only have one description in your dictionary. And then you walk into the land where the Eskimos live, and how they can speak and talk of so many different kinds of snow. And yet you think, because of your comment, limited by your language actually, embedded in a very small box really, only very few words can really describe, but you think you're right, what snow is, with your one description. Limited sounds, limited vibrations, limited pictures. You can never really know the Eskimo, never, with your one limited description and hanging on to your one comment. And human beings are basically taught, especially in the Western world, that when you go into a fire dance, you go into a building, you throw your comments out with your one description without having to give yourself patience, without having to give yourself a little patience. That maybe there's another language here I do not understand and do not see. Maybe there are sounds here that are unfamiliar. It's like walking into another country. And yet not being respectful, and not being considerate, and not giving yourself time to learn to see, to hear the other language. For there was a comment after the end of the fire dance, and I kneeled in front of the fire, and I wiped my hand on my knee, because the comment was that I burnt myself, and I put this special medicine, Indian medicine, on my hand because I burned my hand, so to cool off the burn. And the person was dead wrong, just dead wrong. The person lived by their own comments. And people do this all the time, all the time. There was no burning at all. Want to know what really happened? Would you like another description in your dictionary to add? Do you like another way to view life? What really happened was that it wasn't until the last year. I've had this pabudi. It's a special ash from India. It's a beautiful, beautiful ash. It is very much like when a human being passes away and you burn the body and you get an ash. It's very much like a beautiful fire. And if you gather the ash, it's so soft. It's so, so soft. It is very much like sleeping on a down pillow. But there's a big difference to sleep on a pillow that is just feathers or down. Beautifully, beautifully soft. And after having this special ash, I've had it for over 15 years, and people had given me also packages of it from India. And finally, after 10 years, I could bring it out. It was there's this drawer that I have of all these things. And finally, I brought it out, and now I can use it in the fire dance. And because my hand, I use the water so much in the fire dance, and and I'm sweating. I sweat a lot. Running around a lot, working a lot. And if you put an ash on a sweaty hand, what's going to happen to the ash? Think about this. What's going to happen to the ash? Think about it. It's going to turn into mud and to be a big mess. Because what I want to do with the ash, what I want to do with it is I want to blow it onto the altar to bless the altar, bless the objects with my breath. So I have to dry my hand first of all. My hand's not burned. I just want to dry it so I can put the ash on it so I can blow it on before it sticks to my hand. Okay. Comments, huh? This is really the killer that holds the awakener from being awakened. Your comments. And here's another comment. I love the comments because I can use it to teach. It helps a lot. There was this other person, a new person, and the comment was,
Because I tell you, get closer, I tell everybody, get closer, come on, come in, come in. And her comment was that you need people very close to you to be secure, so you can speak. You need people really close to you. Comment. No. Actually, they're crowding my face. They're crowding my space, But the only reason I do it, because the people in the back, I like to see faces, and the people in the back, it becomes the further back you are, the less clear distinction there is. Can you imagine? I mean, this is really, really, really what it is. Stand up. You're going to talk to someone, okay? And there you are, and you want to talk to someone. And it's a good friend. And you're just walking on the street, so you stop this far and say, hey, how are you? Hey, how you doing? Yeah? Okay? Yeah. Huh? We don't do this, do we? We get closer. Closer. We don't get into their face. It's too close. But we found a way of where it's comfortable. It's comfortable. And that's all it is communication. But it's distance. Distance makes a big difference. It makes a very big difference. It's the impact of the difference. And so, because throughout the years, the people in the back, I like to have them closer so I could see their faces. And it brings it more personal from the people in the back. And that's the only reason I say, come on in so I can see the people in the back better. So you can see what comments do, what it does to the head. You can turn anything around in any direction with your comments. It's a killer, people. It is a killer. It is, it's advisable. It is supported. It is nourished. Most people do it. It is so ordinary, nobody really pays any attention. People just take the comments. But it's a killer. It is an absolute killer to the personal self. Can you see these two absolute dead wrong comments? And they're ordinary comments. And what do we do when we walk into a store, a new seminar, we meet a person? What do we do? We're watching a movie, throwing comments out. With our limited vocabulary. You know that with most children, mothers have a better way, or you could say a better way in understanding sometimes what their children are doing, their behavior, their actions, sometimes. But most of the time it's just dead wrong. Because their vocabulary is very much like Eskimos. But they don't have the tools or the language to put it on paper or express it. But it's in a child's language, which is very, very different. And especially once we reach the age, especially in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, we're so linear and we're so dead set in our own dictionary, in our own encyclopedia. You don't have a chance. Just don't have a prayer. That's why in one of the teachings, what it is to be a guest. People, to find the Spirit within, you have to be and not just know it, but with every cell, with every one of your bones, with every strand of hair, with your pain, with your joy, with your happiness, with your intelligence, all of it. It has to know it is only a guest. Does a guest tell the people in the house what to do with the home? My head is not mine, people. My arms, my hands, my fingers are not mine. I know it. Borrowed time, a borrowed tool, a borrowed body only for a certain time. It is the Spirit that is a guest embodied. And once you forget that, and you become, let's say, a slave to comments, you're lost inside. You're lost. A guest is a good witness and watches and dances with how the house moves, not how you move, how the house moves that you are in. And this earth is a very big home. And when you throw out a comment, watch your pride. You get so full of pride that you know. And that's the killer. And all it is was just to bless the altar. That's all it was. And all it is to see the faces in the back, to see their faces a little bit closer. That's all it is. And watch what comes out of your mouth. The more insecure a person is, the more comments one makes. The more fear a person has, the more comments are going to emanate out of your mouth. The more doubt you have, the more comments will be manufactured by the thousands and thousands. And yet only a few bubbles will finally emerge out that will reach the top of your throat. And finally, there will just be maybe one or two out of the thousands manufactured inside your emotional body. Comments. It isn't the eyes. We have eyes, and we know that we can have eyes that can kill with hate. And we know that we have eyes that can also really send a kiss. And we also have eyes that can be very confused. And we also have eyes that can be very, very, very kind. We also can have eyes that seem artificial and almost dead. And we also have eyes that have nothing but hope. And all they are just a little pigment. And most of it is water. For we know how volatile the emotions can be. We know how loving and how hateful we can be in a matter of a moment or two. How clear, so clear. And then and also the eyes can also be used to throw out comments. So be careful. What kind of eyes do you want? What kind of eyes do you wish? What kind of eyes are good to have? So to learn this well, to learn this lesson very, very, very well, whenever you leave your home, whenever you leave your house, see yourself. Somewhere near the North Pole where the Eskimos live. And you have your dictionary with you with only one description of snow. And your ears will open up and your eyes will open up to start to add more and more descriptions. The many angles, the many crystals, the multitude of designs, not only the crystal itself, but it is also of all the sounds that the snow can make. So be a good German with the Eskimos. Be a good anthropologist with the Eskimos. And give yourself time, many years, to learn. And you will hear that the snow falls 52 different ways, not just one. And when the witness becomes more and more relaxed with yourself, it will become very clear to you when the comments start to come from others how volatile, how destructive it can be. And yet it can be constructive and helpful if the comments are good. And somehow you'll find yourself not so bound by rope and chain. And somehow you will find yourself not tied up in all kinds of sailor's knots. And somehow you'll find yourself not so twisted. And somehow a lot more space. When the guest, when the comments, when the guest is more present, and the comments no more. In every year that I have lived that I can remember, once I became aware enough, self-aware, personally self-aware, like all kids do, maybe sometimes at the age of 5, sometimes 7, sometimes 12, and sometimes it's puberty, 14, 12, 16. And during this time of personal self-awakening, not just to various parts of my body, but myself. And when I was young, I thought I knew. And when I was 14, I thought I knew what was going on. And when I was 17, I thought I knew. And when I was 18, I thought I knew. And when I was 25, I thought I knew. And when I was 33, I thought I knew. And when I was 41, I thought I knew. And when I was 51, I thought I knew. When I was 53, I thought I knew. And when I was 80, I thought I knew. I was young, and now I am old. And now that I am old, I know that I am young. A shift of words, a shift of time, a shift of understanding, a shift of maturity, a shift of accomplishments. And when we finally get our first job and work enough, and we find out it's not so easy to make it in this world, and what a thrill it is to go to work for the very first time. It's kind of scary too. But after doing it year after year, decade after decade, how it can wear us down. And sometimes it becomes monotonous and very laborious. And sometimes it is a great joy to go to work. And sometimes we just get too tired to brush our hair. And sometimes we just feel nobody understands us. And sometimes we have the universe backing us up with a great wind of feeling and thought and much to say. And sometimes that wind all of a sudden disappears and we wonder what happened. Was it too much ice cream? Was it sleeping too much? Or was I just bad? We try to figure out what it is to make more money, to make more friends, to find a woman or to find a man. Sometimes we figure out what it is until something else comes along and we find out we have to start all over again with our theories and our ideas. I was young and now I am older. And now that I'm older, I am still so young. And so many ages here, teenage, very young, 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. So many perspectives, so many pages, so many ways to see life. And yet Susanna is Susanna, and Gaba is Gaba, and Barbara is Barbara, and Bernard is Bernard, and Malcolm is Malcolm, Claudia is Claudia, and Ruth is Ruth. And Martin is Martin, and Ava is Ava. And yet we were all so young, and now that we are older, and yet somehow we're still young. And after working so many years, we kind of know we have reduced it that it's just a job to pay our bills. And somehow we still need to do this. We just cannot stop. And yet we found our weekends and sometimes in the evenings when there's a little free time to somehow find a way back into ourselves. A way that somehow can touch ourselves, to touch our hearts, to touch our feelings. That somehow we know that we have either lost along the way or somehow forgotten them, or somehow paid attention too much to this or to that. And if we could stick our hand down our throats or into our ears to somehow find this time and space. For we have felt when there was peace, a great amount of peace, that may have lasted a moment or two, or a few days, or a week, or a month. And we can remember the times when wisdom somehow, there it was, and somehow all the energy we needed and all the wonderful feelings to go with it. But like a roller coaster, and like a feather in the wind, like a barometer, and like people, it is up and down, up and down. And somehow to find a happy medium, to find a place, so we don't rise so high that the fall is deep and fast, that we don't go down so low that it seems like we'll never stand up again. And yet, this middle ground, this happy medium, it is a place to find. There's something good in that. But our memories will never forget the ups and the downs. And it always remembers you cannot really trust to hold that space of peace or wisdom, to stay in that space of clarity. Be wiser with your life, whether you are young or old. It is not to conquer the downs and the ups. It is not to be the master of what it is to be above or below. It is basically what has been built into the structure of your society. It is the language itself that has taught you how to think about the ups and the downs. You have not been taught the Eskimo hearing, the Eskimo thought, of the many other ways that this planet is, and not just a roller coaster. Be wiser with your life and your time. But we cannot literally stop the ups or stop the downs from coming. And somehow it is better to be somewhat in the middle. And maybe if I embrace both, one with my left hand, the other with my right, maybe if I embrace them both, get my surfboard, instead of being hit by the waves, let's ride them. Instead of being clobbered by the waves, let's learn to ride the waves. Let's ride them. For you see, what is above and what is below are really based on comments built into the structure of each word that you have learned since you were a kid. For each sound emanating out of a book, and you being taught what that letter means and what that word means, it is etched in stone. And that stone, once it emanates from your mother or your father or your teachers, that stones are going into your ear, etching into your brain, producing more and more, not just an education, but of comments and thoughts and feelings of what is up and what is down, cultural based. And when you have not been taught another way to view what is the sky and what it is to be ill, and what it is when one passes away, or one hates you, or one hits you, or one kisses you, how one can be a slave to the stones that your brain has eaten and digested. But there's no other view but your own cultural education. And I wonder really what illness is to the eyes of an Eskimo. Then I will really wonder what I considered misfortune. I really wonder what it looks like through the eyes of an Eskimo. Is it really misfortune? Or is it a delay because my synchronicity is off? Is it a delay because somehow I've missed a point somewhere in my background? Am I being guided, coveted by the winds which are nothing but hands and time? So when I reach that door and open it up, I can cross the path of an old lost friend. And how easy it is by a few seconds to miss anybody in our given day. Lover, lover, where are you? Friend, friend, I've been looking for you. And if I find myself too busy in my head, somehow too preoccupied to look over there, and there you are, just crossing the street, but somehow I cannot turn my head. Even though I want to in my heart, even though I want to find you in my heart, I find myself out of sorts just by a second or two. Life is alive. And if you kind of like think of it energetically, the inner eye of all creatures, it just not sees through these two eyes of yours that can look into the direction where your nose is headed to. But it senses a vast perimeter around you. And it's always speaking to you about what is going on and what is happening. Who is crossing your path and who is not. But we have been taught to pay attention to the blackboard and only look straight ahead. It's only in front of you, and that is all. To deny our feelings, deny what's hidden. And then when love or likeness comes into a relationship, no wonder we're so confused. Lover, lover, where are you? Is it your mind I seek, or is it your heart? Is it your compatibility, or is it your love? contemplation, meditation, quietness, quiet time. And somehow when these spaces start to come into our life, and somehow the identity inside somehow is not so easily bound by these cultural words that have given us good direction, has taught us how to build. Because without these etched words and these etched letters and these etched sentences and these etched chapters and these etched books, we could not build our civilization the way it is. We need this, and it's wonderful once we understand it. But are we the house? Are we the cement? Are we the piece of steel? Are we the design? Are we that word? Are we the letter? Are we the dot? Are we the period? And pretty soon we become the comments. And yet, two great events that throws the book away, that throws all the letters away, that it even throws one's mind into somewhat of a chaos of silence, where no book, no letter can do anything. And that is when a child is born. And watch what happens to the mind. And that is when a human being passes away. Watch what happens to your mind. Then you'll find that you truly are not the words or the letters. And yet these words and letters have been driven into our brain, into our nervous system, and it's necessary that it has. But to have discretion, what are these etched words inside? What are these etched pictures inside? And really, what are you? Where are you? Inside. There's a difference. Very much like the difference between the head caught in one's mind and to be in one's heart. There's a difference. That is why don't hate society, don't hate your society. Be wise with your life and embrace what is above and what is below. Embrace what is bad and what is good. And then you don't hide what your society has done that is wrong. Then you don't hide what you have done that is wrong. For the whole mind, it has access. Don't hide your goodness. Don't hide your caring. Put them both on the table in front of you. Embrace both.